Hello everyone and welcome to the Canonical Chronicle, the meme-infused SEO news that stops your rankings from tanking. Talking about rankings tanking, boy oh boy, that last core algorithm update on the 5th of March has sent the industry into a bit of a spiral. So we're just going to talk about that exclusively and diagnose exactly what has happened. So in particular, we're going to look at what the update was actually targeting. We're going to be answering the question, is the AI content still okay to use? We're going to look at what people are saying on Twitter, and then we're going to have a much more sober look at what's going on using some of our agency data. We're going to look at what you should do if you've been hit, and a bunch more things to help you along the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Google has announced a new core algorithm update. This time they've cited they want to keep spam out of the index, and SEOs have reacted in their usual cool and considered manner.
The end is near! We are all gonna die!
So this update targeted three things: scaled content, also known as AI content, site reputation abuse, also known as parasite SEO, and expired domain abuse, which is also known as just buying an old domain and using its page rank to rank for things. So bear in mind, this was a core update. It just happened to have this kind of new stuff in it. So they'll be updating everything to do with tech, content, EAT, links, you name it, it's all being updated at once. In fact, according to Elizabeth Tucker, who's one of the senior product managers at Google, she said, "We expect that the combination of this update and our previous efforts will collectively reduce low quality, unoriginal content in search results by 40%. Now, based off of anecdotal evidence, we're seeing a lot more than 40% of queries being affected, especially if you go onto Twitter. A lot of people are even saying that their entire Search Console account, so every single domain inside of Search Console, is being mass de-indexed. So very helpfully, Lily Ray has published a big spreadsheet of a bunch of websites that she's tracking that have seen exactly this sort of mass de-indexation. The link is down below if you want to have a look at them. I've also included a bunch of links to Twitter threads with like lots of interesting dialogue showing a bunch of domains that have been affected as well, just to give you a full spectrum of ideas around what's actually happening and how we can combat it. Now, how good is your memory?
When I was a kid, my fairy godmother asked me if I wanted a long penis or a long memory. I forget my response.
Well, sadly, I opted for the long memory. So I can remember back to 2011 when there was an update called the Farmer Update. Now, if you weren't around at that time to remember it, essentially Google was focusing on getting rid of content farms, and they were looking at low quality link schemes as well. So if you weren't around in 2011 to remember this sort of stuff, Google was targeting content farms and link schemes, and we saw mass de-indexation in the exact same way with any domain that was doing any of this stuff in a Search Console account. Every single one of them would be tarred with the same brush and they'd get mass de-indexed. But now, instead of it being content farms with spun content, that spun content is now called AI. Instead of being link farms and article directories, we're now seeing parasite SEO and expired domains. Kind of sounds quite familiar.
Oh, that makes sense.
In fact, in 2011, it was such big news that the New York Times actually had a post about this where a big American retailer, JCPenney, was completely de-indexed from their search results because of this exact problem. So even back in the day, Google were like,
do you know what nemesis means?
So nowadays, it's not the New York Times reporting on it, it's Twitter that is reporting on it. In particular, there's a bit of a theme. We can see that people who are very popular personalities on Twitter getting hit very, very hard. But you got to ask yourself, like, why would Google possibly want to pick on these SEO influencers in particular?
Where are the plastics?
They're teen royalty. If North Shore was Us Weekly, they would always be on the cover.
Well, they're the popular kids, or at least they're like the well-known, slightly annoying kids that are always on Twitter. And if from a social engineering point of view, you want to hit those people that have got the biggest audience. So if they say, oh, my sites have been hit and I was only doing this really minor thing, that will flood through the industry and everyone will get very nervous about doing those sort of tactics. So Google can not only use algorithms to clean up the SERPs, they can use a little bit of social engineering as well. In other words, Google are using the Tinchy Strider method when it comes to policing the SERPs.
Chat shit, get banged.
Want to know one question. If you use AI to produce your content, will it hurt?
Oh, it's a deep burn. Oh, it's so deep.
As always, rather annoyingly, the answer is it depends. Aleda Solis came out with this really great tweet which actually cites Google's own material for this, where they actually state how you can use AI to produce content, but in a non-spammy way that's still good for the user. So ultimately, Google are just saying that like it's fine to use AI as a tool to create content as long as it's not high volume, low quality stuff that's just pumped out onto a site in hundreds and thousands of pages. And in fact, lots of really popular websites already do this. So if we look at like a sports website, for example, where they've got these data tables of like sports stars and different games and all this stuff coming through, as the end user, do you want to read a big table of just numbers? No, you want to read sentences and paragraphs. So a lot of people are actually using AI to take a data table and turn that into sentences. And that's something that Google is absolutely fine with, if done tastefully and not to produce content at scale. Another industry that's been doing this for a really long time is the travel sector. So online travel agents, in particular Skyscanner, if you go onto any of their like flight pages, you'll see all of this useful information about the particular destination you're going to. It could be like the weather that's expected there or the price of tickets over time. But what they're doing is they're just taking data feeds and using AI to turn that into interesting sentences. So you can read about how the ticket prices have changed over time, or you can read about the best times to go in a sentence instead of trying to make sense of data in a table. So you might be asking yourself, well, what is a bad way to use AI? And it's really simple. If you put a bunch of keywords into an AI tool and say, make me a 300-word piece of content and do that hundreds and hundreds or thousands of times, that's not good. It may work for a while, as we saw with the causal website. However, like the SEO went on to Twitter and was like, look at how I hijacked the SERPs. And of course he got like smacked straight away. Here's a graph for receipts. So if you're experiencing volatility in the SERPs right now, what should you do, or what should you tell your clients? Well, you're not gonna like the answer. I'm just gonna tell you to chill out and do nothing.
Just chill out. You know, drink a 7-Up, eat a moon pie, quit murdering people.
Because here's the thing, yes, there's these new things that Google are targeting as part of this core update, but they're really targeted at the lowest end, spammiest content you can imagine. So you really shouldn't be getting upset by it or negatively affected by it. It's very unlikely that this massively damages you in any way. And also, let's keep in mind, this is a core update. So they're not just rolling out this new AI thing, they're also looking at EAT, technical, links, whatever's on the page. Like, they're looking at so many things. Remember the Panda update when it happened, the Penguin update when it happened. Everything's being rolled into one core update, and these systems are updating over the space of 4 to 6 weeks. So just chill, don't do anything. Now, anecdotally, what we're seeing is something really interesting. So we've got a reasonable amount of agency data. We have access to a lot of Search Console accounts that have got hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of URLs in them. The ones that are seeing the most volatility are the ones where the brand name is ambiguous. So what do I mean with the brand name being ambiguous? Well, if you've got a domain with a keyword in it, we're seeing much more volatile fluctuations. And you got to think to yourself, well, why would that happen? Well, think about it. Machine learning is such a huge part of the algorithm, and so are user signals. So when all this stuff is being changed and reset and updated, if you don't have very obvious brand signals around your domain, they need to run it through their machine learning and get more user signals again to make sure with the new algorithm that all of the SERPs are correct. So if you've lost rankings for like a major term and it's not come back yet, I don't think it's going to come back. The reason being is that's enough clicks for them to run the machine learning on to know if it's a good result or a bad result. However, if you've lost rankings on long tail, that might just take a little bit longer to come back because there's just physically less click data because less people are searching for it. So I would wait for a while and I would expect that to kind of bounce back. So here's an example from our agency where we've got a very steady domain that is getting some really nice gains over time. Then the update happens and all of a sudden extreme volatility, and it's now starting to calm down again. We compare that to other domains where there's keywords in the domain or it's a better brand. It's a completely different look. So a lot of people are asking, should I remove unhelpful content from the site now? The answer is no. So Google works at a page level, not at a domain level. So if you've got a bunch of pages on the site that you would class as not helpful or thin or something like that, I would get rid of them anyway if they're not there for any particular reason, but that's not going to be a reason why a core update has affected you. What I would do instead is just focus on your core pages and make sure they're up to date with fresh information. The reason I say fresh information is because a Twitter user called Natzir actually noticed something that was updated in Google's Search Quality Rater guidelines. So if you don't know what these are, it's essentially a document that Google gives to actual human beings to rate websites based on a list of things. That's then fed into the machine learning and they can analyze sites at scale. So the little tiny update that they put in the Search Quality Rater guidelines was essentially around AI content, saying that it should be deemed as low trust if it was out of date or incorrect content. So there's clearly this view of freshness of content and accuracy of content that's featuring much heavier inside of the algorithm. So, like I said, instead of removing old pages or pages that you think are quote unquote unhelpful, what I would do is I would just go in and update your core pages so that it's fresh content. So as we're right in the middle of this update, I would expect things to be very volatile right up until the middle of April. I always give it 4 to 6 weeks for everything to truly roll out. And that's for two reasons really. So there's going to be some rollbacks. So as Google puts all of these things into play, they're going to be bug checking to make sure they're not getting any false positives or any negative results that were unexpected. And also they're making changes to multiple systems at once. This is why it doesn't make sense to attempt to fix or change anything during a core update. Because if you think about it, we're looking at technical systems, we're looking at content systems, backlinks, the whole gamut is being updated. So what you're gonna prune some content or make some internal link changes and that's gonna make a difference. Even if it did, how would you know? Because there's so many things being updated, you can't say I did A and B happened. So just wait. So all that being said, how do you know if you've been affected or not? Well, if you've been given a penalty, any manual action will be inside of Search Console, and you should also get an email from Google saying that there's been a manual action on your account. So the reports are coming through that the way in which they're wording it is a pure spam penalty. So this is very much related to the AI content stuff we were talking about at the start. However, if you're a little unsure about what's happening or how to recover from it, Google's actually put a brand new FAQ series on one of their webmaster forums, which I'll link to down below, and it goes into detail on like how to find out if you've been hit by the update, how to recover, and just explains all the systems in a lot more detail. You can use that to then orientate yourself and work out what to do next. So as an agency, we are very lucky to work with some websites that are big.
What's funny about Biggus Dickus? Well, it's a joke name, sir. I have a very great friend in Rome called Biggus Dickus.
So because of that, there's a lot of URLs that we can look at to kind of analyze patterns and kind of see what we think is going on kind of more anecdotally. And one of the big things that sticks out for us, again, purely anecdotally, is the volume of technical changes versus the volume of content that's being produced. Namely, if the website is producing tons and tons and tons of content and just publishing and publishing and publishing, but not making any technical updates, they have not fared very well. However, if there's a website that is publishing content but making technical changes over time, they seem to be faring much better. Now, if you indulge me and let me speculate for just a second, so trust is a huge thing in search results. And if we think about it, Google has a document and a URL for every single query in the world. In fact, they've got multiples. If you type in a particular keyword, they probably get hundreds, if not thousands of pages they can serve you up for that, all of very similar quality. So how do they then decide what one to rank? Well, it's got to be based on things like trust and what is best for the user. And what is a very good proxy to trust? Well, firstly, the amount of people that are Googling your brand name is a very good indicator of trust, but also the amount of positive technical moves that a domain is making is also a good proxy to trust. Because if you've got a team of developers who are making core web vital changes and making your site faster, if you're working with a UX team to make the navigation better and the information architecture with your internal linking better, surely that should be rewarded. And if there's enough of it with enough difficulty, that would essentially say, well, surely this is a much more trustworthy site. Now you take that versus some WordPress theme that is getting updated every so often with like plugins and just creating bloat. It makes sense to like demote that from a trust point of view and promote the ones that are making more positive technical changes. So that's all from me this week. Like I said before, if you work with an SEO team and you need to report this stuff to them, we create a deck for you every single week, so you can just slap your logo on there, take them through a couple of slides so everyone is up to date with all the latest Google updates. That's everything for me for now, so I hope that if you have been hit, your site recovers well, and we'll see you in the next one.